Welcome back to our session 5, the marriage course, Christian marriage course. And we're going to continue our discussions on emotional neglects. And we'll be talking about emotional neglects to our children and also from wife to husband, okay? And also, if we have time, we're going to talk about wider family. So last time we talked about self, where we talk about there is 7 different ways to rest so that we can learn to kind of self-care ourselves so that we can give more effectively to the people around us and also to care for ourselves. And then today we're going to talk about our spouse, continue our discussions. And last week we talked about a little bit how our husband can invest into our wife's emotional bank. And today we're going to talk about the other way around. So how can wife deposit into a husband's emotional bank? And we'll also talk about our children, how, sometimes ministry also affects us being emotionally neglected to our children as well. So this is what we talked about last time, the importance of self-care and 7 ways to rest. And also from husband to wife, we talked about things that the husband can do to deposit into the wife's emotional bank. So today we're going to talk about how can sometimes wife also be emotionally neglected to a husband. Now, one thing I would like to confess, also I'm as a wife, I think sometimes we can be very easily task focused. Okay, task focus. Understand what I'm saying? Like we have to take care of the house chores, making sure we cook our meals, make sure the clothes are clean, make sure, our kids are, in order and the homework and everything. So we can become quite task oriented, become very task oriented, meaning that sometimes we kind of also neglecting our husband's emotional needs. So here are a few things I would like to propose, and that will help us to be better wives, okay? The first one, 8 tips to be a lovely wife. This is what I call, okay? Now, if you have been to the workshop that I've done called How to Be an Attractive Wife, there was 4 sessions where you can go back and watch how we can develop physical, emotional, and spiritual intimacy with our spouse. And I think it's very crucial that we spend time looking at that. So if you're interested, you can go back to my YouTube channel, Sisters in Ministry Toolbox. There are 4 sessions on that particular topic. But today I would like to address a few that I think is very crucial. I think first of all, pray spiritually, emotionally, being connected with our spouse. And secondly, being able to give our husband space sometimes. I think I learned this after I got married for some time, that my husband actually needs space when he comes home from ministry or work, that he doesn't want to listen. He needs some space to defrost. I call it defrost time. It's like you take a chicken from the fridge, the frozen one, you need to defrost the chicken, right? To let it, kind of defrost, let him to rest a little bit and kind of, rejuvenate his mind a little bit, let him settle down a little bit. So don't just, when he just start going into the house, you start bombarding him with a lot of things, talking to him. And I learned over time that it may not be the most efficient time when I communicate with him. Intimacy, don't withhold it like a sexual intimacy, withhold it like a weapon, okay? I think in the videos, the workshop, it talks about how we can actually use this as a way to minister to our husband. This is the real needs that God put us as wife, as part of our calling. Communication, that we don't just nag about our husband, okay? Sometimes, we just hide things and we don't want any negative feelings. We might not want to confront or voice it out, but pray for the right timing to voice it out. Expectation, pray for understanding and guide our heart. Sometimes their expectation could be real. Sometimes some of the expectation could be false, could be lies that we believe about our husband. So if you're also interested, there's a workshop on that, how, some of the lies that we believe about our husband. And honestly, I think by preparing that workshop also helped me to realize there's some unreal expectation that we believe that that kind of damage our relationship. So if you would like, you can go back to watch the video as well. Hold our tongue, don't complain. And I find it's very easy. Sometimes if we not careful, we voice our complaint verbally to our husband. But I learned over the years, I think the best way is first to process those hurt or complaints before God, before voice it out to our husband, so that he doesn't see us as nagging constantly. And I think I'm praying for the right timing to talk to our husband. Be his number one fan. I think this is something we all have to learn, especially some of us or most of us grew up in a culture where we don't really express much encouragement. How many of you live in a culture like that? Raise your hand. Like you growing up, you don't receive much compliment or encouragement. Raise your hand. Yeah, I think most of us in most of our culture, right? So we're not used to, kind of show our appreciation verbally. So there's something definitely I have learned, I'm still learning, is to voice out my appreciation of my husband. And there are actually a lot of affair out there that people got into affair. One of the reasons is they found someone, admire them more than their spouse. Okay. That is very dangerous. So we want to be the number one fan of our husband. And last but not least, I would say we could also be a good event planner for the family. Plan for the family fun, look up free resources out there to plan for family time together. Because sometimes our husbands do not have the capacity to do so. So as wife, we can be creative in that sense. Okay. All right. So this is the 8 tips that I have for you. So right now I will ask your husband. Okay. We're going to give you 5 minutes. Now is the husband's turn to think about ways that your wife can help deposit into your emotional bank. Now, last time we talked about how the husband can invest into the wives. Now it's the husband's turn. We will give you 5 minutes. So you take this time. On the left-hand side, you see this sheet here, deposit. What will make you feel loved or make kind of emotionally tank? How can we fill, your wife can fill up your emotional tank? For example, I don't know, give you a massage, maybe, I don't know, or okay, take the kids out on a Saturday morning, give me 1 hour free time, for example. I'm just giving you some example, okay? And then what withdrawal? What are some of the things that your spouse or your have done before they kind of withdraw from your emotional bank? So we're going to give you 5 minutes to do that, and then discuss. Tell your spouse, your husband, tell your wife, how can she deposit into your emotional bank? Okay.
All right. I hope you guys had a good conversation. One thing I noticed, because I've kind of been taking a peek at how you guys were engaging, I think a lot of the guys were quite quiet. This was your chance to tell your wife what would really make me emotionally fulfilled and what would make me emotionally drained. So that was your chance. That was like a Christmas present for you. And all joking aside, I do feel like it's important for us guys to openly share what can help us emotionally and what can drain us emotionally. I think sometimes we are raised in a culture where we feel like, us men, we don't talk about emotion. That's actually not how God created you. God created you to be a physical being, a spiritual being, but also an emotional being. And sometimes when we deny our emotion, we pretend it's not there. We actually are not honoring God's complete design. So I guess what I would encourage us guys on this in this class is that we do take effort to express ourselves emotionally. Now, it's not something that's easy. I mean, I'm probably the first to admit I don't like opening up myself emotionally to my wife and talk about, oh, honey, I wish you did this, or oh, I wish you didn't do this. Guys feel like, oh, we just suck it up, right? We just deal with it. But I think that is unhealthy. The reality is when you put it away, the problem doesn't go away. It just piles up. And then emotionally, you become drained. And sometimes emotionally, you become detached. And although your wife wants to meet you and fulfill you emotionally, they don't always know. And as Josephine said, the evil one knows that too. And the evil one may use that opportunity to bring in another woman who will be able to speak and provide for you in those emotional arena where it was actually meant for your wife to do. And if you let that go, if you let that prolong, that's a very dangerous area to be a part of. So if I were to backtrack, I think as husbands, we do need to be open and share with our spouse what fills us, but also what drains us as well. That is our part. And I think the sisters on this call would all be very willing to do their best to meet those emotional needs. Yes, yes, sisters, yes, yes. See, the sisters are very responsive. So go ahead.
Any example to give yourself?
Well, I think when she said, hey, talk about examples, right? Well, for me, actually, I think she said it. I'm actually a very introverted person. So when I come home, I need time to, she calls it defrost, to warm up, right? I think that's a good analogy. I don't, because you guys know this, in ministry, you spend your whole day talking. And for an introvert, that's very draining. You have to always think of ways to engage and be the one to lead discussions, to socialize, to reach out to newcomers. For me, that's very draining. So when I come home, the last thing I want is to talk to anybody. Not because I hate my family, it's just so much of me has been withdrawn that I need time to refill my tank. And my wife knows this because I think, for one thing, she loves to talk. So she wants to hear, she wants to chat right away. But over the years, I think I've been able to tell her, you know what, I just need some time. And that sounds mean at first, but then I realized it's actually not fair to her if I don't share with her. That is what I need at that moment. So I tell her, I say, hey, I just need some space. And then when I go into my room and just recharge for 15 minutes, I come out and I can engage with her, with the kids. Everyone is happy and the sky is blue and the day goes on beautifully. But that begins with me admitting to her that right now I can't. I need my space. And you may be fulfilled in different ways emotionally. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe for you, you need to talk. I don't know. But whatever it may be, God wired you that way. And I think it's fair for you to share with your spouse, who is supposed to be one with you, right? The two shall become one. It's only fair to let her know so that she knows how to support you and fulfill you emotionally.
Okay, all right. So I hope you have a chance to share with your spouse the husband, were you able to share with your spouse kind of what your need is? Yes? Yes, okay, good. I hope you did. Okay, all right. I hope you did. All right. Okay, so I want to wrap up this segment, and I hope that you also talk to your wife. How can she, in the schedule, help you to invest in your emotional needs? Okay, so it's something that I hope you can talk about. I'll give you 2 minutes, quick 2 minutes. Just talk to your spouse, your wife right now. What in the schedule you can help me, your husband, okay, to give me some help me invest in my emotional bank. I'll give you 2 minutes to talk about this.
So just to give you an example, for me, it's every day after work, I need that space. So I schedule in that alone time space, right? Or sometimes it's once every several weeks, I need half a day to go off and have a retreat. So that actually helps me. Interestingly, it's not necessarily spending time together. That may be part of it, and we certainly do that, but sometimes what you need emotionally is actually time away. So that's just an example. Go ahead and talk about that with your spouse.
You both are unmute.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I hope you have a good discussions with your spouse, particularly on this area, how you can put it in your schedule. So last but not least, I want to show you this book. Some of you might know this book already. It's called His Needs, Her Needs. So basically, it's a very popular marriage book where it talks about how to build a affair-proof marriage. Okay, so I think even though we're in ministry, we're not exempt from any sort of temptations. Okay, next week we will talk more about that. Okay, so here's the list that they have for the husband's needs. It'll be sexual fulfillment, recreational companion, physical attractiveness, domestic support, admirations from the wife. Okay, so this is the list for the husbands. This is some kind of all the basic needs of a husband, where the wives, they want to feel affections, intimate conversation, honestly, and openness, and financial support, and family commitment. So this is just a quick summary of what the husbands need and the wives needs. So to wrap up this segment, we have talked about investing in each other emotional bank. So I hope that that would be a practice to keep continuing to do that, asking each other, how can I help fulfill that emotional needs? But we also talked about God is ultimately the one who can fulfill our deepest needs. Of course, we can express it to our spouse, but sometimes we must have a real expectation. Our spouse cannot fully fulfill our needs.
All right, so let's continue our discussion on emotional neglect. So far, we've looked at how the husband can neglect the wife. And then today, just now, we looked at how the wife sometimes can neglect the husband. And that's certainly something that both the men and the women need to continue to work on. because quite honestly, life can get very busy. We can become very task focused and we neglect the emotion. But as I said earlier, God gave you emotion for a reason, and we need to honor that. So we cannot pretend it's not there. We need to also ensure each other's emotions are healthy. That way we can experience wholeness. So the last neglect that we want to talk about is emotional neglect of children. Now you may be thinking, well, this is a marriage course. It's about marriage. What does kids have to do with it? Well, those of you who have kids know that the kids can affect all aspects of our lives, especially our marriage. And oftentimes, if we neglect our kids, if we have parenting issue, then quite often that will lead to marital issues because the two are just so intimately tied together. So I want to spend just a brief moment to talk about emotional neglects. And I want to, emotional neglects of children. And I want to speak especially to the guys, not to say the ladies are perfect, okay? So please listen in as well. But I will confess, more often than not, the guys are the ones who don't pay as much attention to the emotions of our children, because reality is we have so many demands outside of a family. So quite often we leave it to the spouse to raise the kids. All right, we'll provide for them financially, or we will take part in some of the responsibilities. But by and large, we say, oh, the wife will take care of the kids, what they eat, what they dress, what they study, all the different aspects of life, we leave it to our spouse. But again, I don't think that's God's design. I think God's design is that the husband and the wife, the father and the mother, need to serve together to meet the needs of our children, their emotional needs. So one thing I want to begin talking about is this thing called Absent Dad in Ministry Home. A book that I read a while back. It's a very good book. It's a book by Dennis Rainey, who has written a lot of materials on family. The book is called Stepping Up, a Call to Courageous Manhood. And one of the things that he argues, which I also believe in, is that today it's harder and harder to find real men in the modern society. It's really hard to find real men in the modern society. And this is why, according to Dennis Rainey. He said, in the good old days when everyone pretty much worked in a farm, in an agriculture society, the dad typically would be working in the farm, and the kids would be there nearby observing the dad, or even working alongside the dad. And as they spend more time together, the kids will learn what godly character means, what it means to be a gentleman. The boys will pick up certain traits that they see as, oh, this is how men should behave. And just through their presence, being each other on the farm, they learn. And for the daughter as well, by watching the dad, how the dad works, how the dad treats the family, how the dad interacts with the kids, the daughter also learn what a godly person looks like, what a man of character looks like. However, if the dad is not present, which oftentimes is the case, right? In industrialized society, in globalized society, I might want to add in a ministry busy society where the guys are always out doing stuff, they're not there to demonstrate to the kids what it means to be a godly person, what it means to be a man. And as a result, the man becomes more like women. Why is that? Because they are learning from the mom. They're learning qualities, they're learning characters, they're learning behaviors, not from the dad, but from the mom. So the guys become more and more feminized. And actually, you see that, right? In today's society, a lot of the guys are very feminine. They are very they even put up makeups and, they behave like women. And that's how a man is portrayed in this day and age. So it is a problem. That's why dentists say it's very hard to find a real man, a real gentleman in today's society. And the reality is, for the boys growing up to become man, it's a huge challenge for them to learn how to be a man if there's no one there to model to them what it means to be a man. Because the dad's not around, well, they don't know what a man looks like. So they don't know how to grow into becoming a gentleman, a godly person. You know, the truth is, as I reflect on my family, and I have a son as well, Josiah, he's 12. I completely agree with what Dennis says. As I look at my son Josiah, he is constantly observing me, and along the way, he's learning what it means to be a man. He observes mom, but he knows that's what it means to be a woman, and he observes me in order to learn to be a man. And I think that's such a rich experience. I want to share with you one of the proudest moments in my life. Okay, my proudest moment. To this day, it's still my proudest moment. Now, you may be thinking, oh, is it to receive an award from school? Well, no. I mean, I appreciate the affirmation, but that was not my proudest moment. You may be thinking, oh, you used to be a businessman. Is it to when you closed the $1 million deal? I said, well, that was a good time. And I'm glad, the business was successful, but that was not my proudest moment. So you may be wondering, what is my proudest moment? I can tell you my proudest moment is one time after dinner, I took my son to play video games, right? To the arcade, to the mall. There's a video game center. And we just went and we saw this video game where you have 8 people sit around this video game, and it's like a fishing game. So the 8 of you play together. And so there I was, it's all kids except me. So I was like the only man in the group, and everybody else was just kids. And then suddenly, as we were playing, I noticed this kid, a complete stranger to both my son and I. He looked up, he saw me, and then he kept playing. And he looked at me again, he kept playing. And then finally, he asked my son, "Hey, do you know who that guy is? Who that guy is?" And Josiah is playing. He said, "Oh, that's my dad." And he kept playing. And then this strange kid looked at me and said, "Wow, your dad is so cool. He plays video games." And then I looked at Josiah. At that moment, he just looked at me and smiled. And I have to tell you, that was probably my proudest moment, because I was able to be there, and that my son felt proud that his dad was there with him, and that the other kids noticed that. So he was feeling like, oh, it's so awesome. The reality is, the kids need us. It doesn't matter what we think or what we say. Kids are very simple. They just need the parents to be there. And especially in this day and age, they need dads to be around. And with that, let me just ask you a very direct question, if I may. And I'll say this to the dads, but to the mom as well, to a certain extent. Are you intentionally engaged in your children's world? Or do you leave the children to your spouse? Are you intentionally engaged? That means dropping things, putting things aside, sometimes removing responsibilities so that you can intentionally be in the presence of your kids, be a part of that world. Is that something that you're doing, or do you just leave everything to your spouse? Sometimes we're so busy, and we may actually be neglecting our children without even knowing it. And neglect can look in different ways. And I talked about the causes of emotional neglect last week in terms of how we may be neglecting our spouse. While the same is true in terms of how we might be neglecting our children. Well, first of all, you're not physically present. You're not there at home. You are busy rescuing the world, right? Becoming the savior that God had never called you to be, by the way. He is the savior, we're not. But somehow we have this savior mentality. We talked about that in week 1, right? So I need to give everything, sacrifice my all. Yes, my spouse, my child to serve in ministry. Sometimes we live in that myth. And along the way, we literally sacrifice our kids. They grow up without a model, and and they are denied what God had intended for them, namely love from the parents, and also especially love from the dad. Other times we may be present, but we're not engaged. We're distracted. Okay, so we're there, but we're on the phone all the time. I one of the things Josephine and I like to do is we go out to eat. I mean, that's kind of like a downtime. A sad thing I often see is here in Singapore, we see families sitting together, but they're all on their phone. Or the dad is there, but he is obviously talking to someone else about business, whatever it may be. And the child, poor kid, he's just sitting there. Or sometimes the dad say, never mind, I'll give you an iPad. And he's kind of doing that. So they're there, but they're not there. That may be something that describes you. There are times when I'm guilty of that as well. We're there, but we're not there. So we need to be aware. Now, some of you may be thinking, what's the big deal? So I'm not a perfect dad. What's the big deal? Well, the sad reality is, that's a typo. There are many missionary kids, ministry kids, pastors' kids abandon their faith and become rebellious because of absent parents. So because the parents are not there, the parents are so busy with ministry, they feel like the ministry has stolen their parents. And they certainly don't want to be a part of that ministry because that ministry is evil. That ministry took away my dad. That ministry took away my mom. I'll confess, there was a season in my life growing up that I actually hated the church. Yes, I hated the church. Why? Because my parents were very involved in the church. I mean, they both had secular jobs, but they're very involved. They're very active in church. They even did church planting. And because of that, they're often not there. And I often felt if my parents had to make a choice between us or the ministry, they would pick ministry. As a child, that's how I felt. And I felt the ministry stole my parents. I hated the church because those are the people that took away my parents. It's very hurtful. Now, the reality is, yes, it's true. Even though our presence with the kids does not guarantee, they will become godly man, godly woman. That's true. Yes, it's true. Even godly and ever-present parents can have rebellious kids. I mean, that's the problem with free will, right? You give someone free will, anything can happen. However, it doesn't mean we don't have responsibilities. Even though there's no guarantee in how they will walk spiritually, we still have to be responsible. And that begins by having a honest self-assessment of who we are. So I'm just going to throw out some questions for you to think about, especially the dads. Again, I'm directing much of this to the dad because I really think this is an area that we are lacking in. So dads, do your children think ministries or seminary studies have stolen their problems? Their parents, not the problems, their parents. If you don't know, let me challenge all of you tonight. Go to ask your child, whether he is 4 or 5 or he's 25, it doesn't matter. Just ask. I'm just curious. Have you ever felt our ministry or my seminary study has stolen your parents, that you feel left behind because your parents are so consumed by ministry and studies? Something to ask them. Do your kids or family think you're more interested in the people in your ministry than them? Sometimes we give them that perception, don't we? In ministry, we're very kind to everybody, right? We got to put on that pastoral look, that pastoral posture. We got to be nice to everybody. And then at home, wow, we're nothing like that. We're like, go away, give me space. Well, do you think your kids feel you're more interested in others than them? Are you home often enough to make a difference? It really starts there, doesn't it? Josephine's talking about, she's going to talk about Deuteronomy 6:7, but it's a biblical command, imperative for us to impress godly characters into our children. Impress means putting pressure, putting the mold onto something for a prolonged period of time so that you will leave behind a mark. So if you're not there, you're not making any mark, okay? Let's just be honest. Let's stop kidding ourselves. If you're not physically present to leave a mark, you're not impressing godly characters in your children. That's just the way it is. There's no microwave solution to impressing godly character into our children. And are your children your most important disciples? Or do you just leave your leftover energy for your kids and spouse? Right? We want to make disciples of all nations. Unless they're our kids, then we don't care. Is that how we behave sometimes? We give so much energy, so much passion, so much effort into discipling others. What about our kids? Do they only get the leftover energy, the leftover attention? Do we only get to them when we have extra time? Do you often vent out your ministry or study frustrations on your children, on your family? You know, here's a sign. If you often find your wife and kids annoying, chances are you are venting out all your frustration on them. They can't always be annoying, okay? As troublesome as kids may be, they can't always be annoying. If you find them always annoying, chances are you actually just venting out your frustration on them. Frustrations that they did not contribute, but you're just using them as your punching bag. Do you know what is going on in their lives? You know, if I were to tell you, ask you what's going on in their lives, can you give me some very specific things that are happening in your kid's life? Or do you just say, oh yeah, they're going to school, they're growing up, you know, they're going to church? Anybody can say that, but do you know what's really going on in their lives? Do you just look at their performance, what they're doing, maybe their grades? Are they going to church? Are they participating in activity? But neglect the emotion. How are they feeling? How do they feel? By the way, kids have feelings too. I don't know if you noticed that. Kids have feelings. Sometimes we don't realize that. We just see them as performers, right? At one activity to the next, one homework to the next, one thing to the next, but they actually have feelings. Do you drag them into your ministries without first understanding how God made them? You know, both of us are ministries. Sometimes we make this mistake. You know, we have this picture of a beautiful Christian family, right? Dad's playing the guitar, mom is leading a singing, and the kids are, you know, doing dances and stuff. But what if our kids hate dancing? What if that's the last thing they want? Do we force them to become a part of a ministry so that we can somehow paint that picture that actually they don't really fit in because they're gifted differently? That's not to say you never involve your kids, but do you involve them in a way that honors who they are, that honors how God has gifted them? Or do you force them into this mold because you think that's what a Christian child should behave, and I expect them to do the same? Have you taken time to even know how they're wired? What are their strengths? What are their challenges? What are their gifting? What are their callings? Do you see them as a baggage that's slowing you down? You know, sometimes when we're really tired and the kids are demanding, yeah, part of us are saying, I wish I didn't have kids. Yeah, I mean, that's horrible to say, right? I think that's how we behave sometimes. They're slowing us down. Don't they realize I have so much to do? If that's how you're thinking, you're treating one of your greatest gift that God has given you, your children, you're treating them not as a gift, but as a burden, as a baggage. And that is not right. God is not pleased with that. So do you see them as a baggage, or do you see them as a blessing? Some as individuals who can shape you spiritually, who can shape you emotionally, who can turn you into better servants. So therefore, we must know this. God uses your marriage to shape you spiritually. Don't forget that. Don't run away from it. God used them to shape you. And also, sometimes for the sake of a family, we need to learn to say no to some ministry opportunities. Yeah, will people be, you know, disappointed? Yeah, of course. People are always disappointed for something anyways. But if we are honoring what the responsibility that God has given us as dads, that's okay. People will be disappointed, but because I'm not the savior, God's the savior, he will make it work. Ultimately, do your kids want to grow up to be like you? I think that is a very penetrating question. And I'll end with this story. one time I was my son is growing up and he has many different interests, soccer, music, and playing drums and gaming and stuff. So I asked him one time, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I thought he might say, I'm a musician or a professional athlete or even a computer programmer, because those are things he's very interested in. So my son thought about it for a while. And then, much to my surprise, he said, I want to be like you, Dad. I want to be a missionary teacher. I was just so blown away. I never in a million years thought he would say that. And it's only by God's grace that my son said that. Because quite honestly, I have failed so many times that I thought I had left a bad mark in his mind of what it's like to be ministry. But by God's grace, he doesn't hate ministry. He's excited about ministry. I don't know if that's where he ends up, but I'm just so thankful. And I pray that's the same for you as well. Your sons and daughters may not be in full-time ministry, but I do pray that they're excited about what you're doing and they respect you for what you're doing. And maybe there's a part of what you're doing that they want to be engaged with as well in the future. So I'll leave you with that. Josephine?
All right. So I want to give you a quick 1 minute to talk to your spouse right now, just to share maybe one thing or, something that really touched your heart at this moment. So you can just talk to your spouse right now, discuss with your spouse. What is one thing that you've learned or kind of challenge you from what Jacob has shared earlier? Okay, I'll give you 1 minute. So give you this time, talk to your spouse right now. So I'm gonna stop here, interrupt for a second. I hope you have a good discussion just now. Yes?
So true, right? We're very good at challenging other people to commit to God. What about our kids? What about the most precious beings in our lives? Wouldn't it be so exciting and wonderful? Now, don't put pressure on them to do it, but I think that's my point. You do it in such a way that they are attracted to it instead of hating it. I do hope one day when I go back to heaven, my kids will say, you know what? I think ministry is exciting and I can see it's so enriching from the life of my parents. I wish I could be a part of that. Isn't that the greatest gift to any parents? Right? Thank you, Jack.
Yeah. But I think at the same time, we don't give the pressure. The kids have to be like us, be missionaries. We try our best. We're a steward from God, but to groom them to live out their godly potentials. Either they serve in full-time ministry or work in a big bank. Working in a big bank can also be a missionary.
Yes.
Be a missionary at that workplace, wherever God places us, we're missionary. I think we just have to groom our children to live out their godly potentials based on their gifting as well. But I think the question being posted is, whether our kids growing up wanted to be like us, whether they will hate us, hate our job. Because the question is really, I think is kind of implying if the kids were actually thinking, the parents being stolen by ministries, whether they were hated to be in ministry. All right, let's continue. Last but not least, I would love to ask all of you, if you, I think we all know this Great Commissions, and I think what we've been talking up to this point, when we always go out to talk about Great Commissions, I think it's such an important message that we need to bring the Great Commission home. And by how we live a life, we bring the Great Commissions to our own children, which is in our Jerusalem. Jerusalem is our home. The closest to our heart is in our home. And I think a lot of times we were surprised. Sometimes when we're running pastor kids camps and missionary kids camp, we were very surprised. All of these children actually never heard of the gospel. So we were very, very sad in a way, because sometimes it could be the parents are very committed outside of the home, and they never had a chance really to live out their faith in front of the children and share the gospel with their own children. So bear in mind, the Great Commissions must first live out at a home before we share with others. Okay, Jerusalem is starting from our home. And I think this verse, I think we all know this. We even preach to others, Deuteronomy. And can I ask Pastor Amos, you might read this verse for us on the screen? O Israel, the Lord our God. Thank you.
Sure. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. This commandment that I give you today are to be on your heart. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road. When you lay down and when you get up, you shall find them as a sign of your hand, and they shall be as a frontal on your forehead. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Deuteronomy 6:7.
Thank you. I think we preach this verse a lot for some of us who pastor, and we heard about this verse a lot. And I think one thing it always strike me, this command, if you notice it, and the verse 5, the command is first of all giving to us as parents, okay, to love God with all your heart, with all your mind, and all your soul, and all your strength. The command is first given to us. We must first live out our heart that we've wholeheartedly devoted our time and effort and strength to love God. Then we can impress them on our children. Now, if you notice it, there's a lot of, in English, is a lot of action word here. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, when you get up. So you can see this is a lifestyle discipleship. It's not something that you only go to church, then we tell the kids, they go to Sunday school, then we tell them about God. It's a continuous process. So when we talk about just now, if we are not even there physically, emotionally, spiritually, how can we impress those truths to our children? Another one is sometimes I think I feel very convicted as well as we prepare a lot for other people outside of our home, ministry-wise, spiritually. So I think during the pandemic, God really convicted in our hearts to really invest in our own children. And I still remember there was a story of a pastor kid that one day she just hear her dad praying for another kid, and then she started crying. And when the dad asked, why are you crying? And she said, because you never, at the home, you never pray with me once. And when I hear you pray with other kids with such gentle voice, with such kindness, I'm really jealous. I feel very hurt because you never pray for me like this, like you pray to this child. So I think sometimes it's very dangerous if we, it's a responsibility to be present and engaged in order to make an impact of our kids. So what do you do intentionally at home to engage and connect with your children? Now, I want everybody to kind of type in the chat right now. What is something that you do that very intentionally at your home? Okay, so everybody, could you please type in the chat right now? So what do you do at your home intentionally to engage and connect with your children? What is something that you do to engage? So we can also learn from each other. Yeah. So if you could please type in the chat, whether big or small, you can just type that. There's no judgment. Okay. It's just what you do at home so we can all learn from each other. Or you can unmute yourself to share as well. If you want family time after dinner, very good.
Very good.
Table game, sharing time, very good. Eat together, worship together, chat together.
Wow.
Very good. To lead in family prayer, cook and do dishing together. Pray for them after they fall asleep. Weekly family time to share a high and low. Very good. Prayer time involve everyone. Chat in snack time, outing. Very good. Board game with children, reading book together.
Nice.
Watch their favorite movies. Very good. Tunes we have watched as well, even though we don't really like it. Play and sing with them. Outreach and unbelievers together. Very good. Greeting when they need to sleep. Okay. Watch Disney film together every Saturday. Very good. I love it. So now we have more ideas. I love how you guys also incorporate fun and also spiritual at the same time. Pick a soccer with family worship to talk about them, visit their home, laugh with them. Very good. Hang out. Excellent. Okay, excellent. Okay, so last but not least, I would love to give you this few suggestions, and I think we kind of talk about this already. I think being intentional, available, love spelled time. We don't even spend time together with kids. It's hard to impact. I want to share a quick story about my daughter recently. Jessie, my daughter Jessie loves bubble tea. Anyone know what bubble tea is? Yeah, bubble tea. Yes. Okay, my daughter loves bubble tea, and I still remember last week I was a little bit busy with ministry stuff. But then I felt that I need to spend time with her, so I took her to bubble tea. And I still remember when we were walking to the bubble tea time, I was just telling her my day. I share with her my day, and I actually talked to her. You know, Jessie, even at your young age, right? God has put non-believing friends around you, and only you can share the gospel with them, because mommy is an adult. I cannot share because they won't want to listen to me, but you are their friends. God also, even you're young, you can still share the gospel with the people around her. And we were just, kind of passing by. I could kind of quickly share this comment, and we had bubble tea. And then the next day, interestingly, she had a friend who came to our house as a neighbor friend. Okay, it's her age. And then I was doing something, and then she suddenly came to my room and grabbed a piece of paper. I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "I want to show her the 4 spiritual law." I was like, okay, there's a 4 symbols, an easy version. We can share the gospel that way. So she took a piece of paper and started drawing the 4 symbol and sharing the gospel with this friend. Okay. So I was very surprised. I was really shocked that she did that. And then later on, I checked with that friend. I said, "Did you understand what she was telling you?" And of course, she didn't quite explain the whole full gospel clearly. So I can't explain to her again. And the friend did accept Christ in our dining table when we had lunch. So I was like, wow, God, you're so awesome. And not only that, after that day, the next day when he went to school, he had 2 other friends. One is Hindu, one is atheist. She also shared the gospel with these 2 friends. Okay. So I was really impressed. But that time I was thinking just having bubble tea, right? But when we were walking there, the time that we being spent together, we walk along, you like Deuteronomy, right? When we're talking, walking, when we're sitting in a home, if God allows us to give that truth to our children. So I was very, very touched at that moment when she started really being, very listen to what I told her. I think fun time is very important. I like how you share about the video time. I think fun time is building a reserve in our children emotionally. If we don't have that kind of emotional bank being deposited, and for children, it's a fun time together. A lot of times, a time that we spend with them. So when we discipline, we must discipline out of the reserve, okay? We're building reserve. Otherwise, if it's just discipline, no love, very quickly they become rebellious. Pray for teachable moments, sensitive heart. I think we also need to know what's going on in a kid's life. And I think one thing recently got really impressed in my heart is my daughter. She kept saying, I don't feel loved. Even though we hug her, we give her many kisses, she said, I still don't feel loved. So, and then it dawned on me when I prayed for this situation, God gave me an idea. Like, hey, maybe it's not just about human love. Have you ever told her there's a hole in her heart that only God can fill? So now I actually started a scripture book. I started a scripture book, basically just a blank book, a notebook. But I start writing scripture that tells her how God would love, how God loved her and God's promise to her. So I will start one day, I'll give one verse, and then I'll write some of my reflection also. I want to give it to her as a gift. Even when she grow up, she'll be able to read this book again. And whenever she doubts about God's love for her. Don't preach and judge quickly and very quick to listen. I think sometimes we always preach at people. We so quickly give suggestions or preach to our kids. Okay, how many of you can relate to that? Raise your hand. Am I the only one? I think all of us. One time my daughter was sharing something with me in the car, okay, because we talk a lot, and I asked her day. And then she's like kind of hiding something from me. She's like, I cannot tell you. Because you're gonna scold me. So I learned my lesson, okay? I learned my lesson. From then on, I would sit my mouth whenever she shares something with me. I'm not gonna pass any judgment at that point. I just listen, okay? Even though I feel like, oh man, I want to say something, okay? I have to zip my mouth, and God help me to have wisdom to talk to her so that she doesn't feel like cannot be open with me. So we have to be careful. Ask open-ended questions. Be an encourager and cheerleader. I think oftentimes we live in a culture, or we grew up in a culture where parents don't even, encourage us. Sometimes everything coming out of our mouth is negative coming out of our mouth. How we treat our kids, right? Discipline, always negative. So I've learned something that we have to be positive, how we say our words, how we be wise in the words we chosen to speak to our children, and praise them for the things they do right, okay, instead of finding the things they do wrong, okay, trying to be finding the things they do right and kind of do the positive reinforcement. I think love and discipleship are together. So I just want to give you a quick few tips. I'm sure all of you have practiced some of these already. So last 2 minutes, I would love for you to talk about, if you have not started this already at your home, what are some of the time that you could be more intentional investing in your schedule, okay, in terms of your children's emotional bank. So maybe I'll give you 5 minutes, the last 5 minutes, talk about this. How can you together as a spouse, okay, as parents, okay, what can we do? So our home, for us, Saturday morning, we will schedule time for our kids. And every day during our new time, 6 to 8, is the time that we spend with our kids, that we won't answer any phone calls or do anything. We'll try not to commit to any ministry commitment during those times. We put that as a sacred family time. Of course, everyone is different. This is just some of the things that we do at home. So I'll give you 5 minutes to talk about what are some of the things that you can do concretely, put in your schedule, things that you can do together to protect and invest in your children's emotionally. All right. We hope you have a good discussions with each other just now. Yes. Okay. Did everyone put down time to invest in your family, in your kids? All right. Good job,
Yay.
everyone. This is a investment that will change your children's life and many more generations to come. Is an investment. Everything we talk about is an investment. Either investment in your wives, investment in your husband, investment in our children, and it will pay off. Okay, God honors our effort when we honor Him in our family first. Okay, so now I'm gonna pass the time to Jacob.
Well, just quick instruction. You know this already, but we're already in week 5 of the marriage course. Today, the topic is gonna be about the impact of family. I think you will appreciate that so much of how you behave, especially in your marriage relationship, has been shaped by your own family. Maybe by how you observe your mom and dad interacting with others. Some of that you may bring into your relationship. Maybe there's certain expectations. Other times, maybe there's hurt in the family. And that has become a baggage that now you bring into your relationship as well. So this session you're going to look at today is very good in helping you unpack, to think about how your marriage may have been maybe influenced by some of the things you brought into this marriage from your parents and also from their in-laws as well. So all to say, it's a very good session. It's also one of my favorite because we actually struggled quite a bit in our early part of our journey, because I think we didn't realize how much our parents had shaped us, certain values that they taught us, for good or worse, for better or for worse. It created some conflict in our relationship. So it's a good time for you to reflect on that. So